Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to see date validation in Salesforce Lightning Web Component. For example, here in this start date selection, if I select any date which is not Monday, it will throw me a validation error. For example, I'm selecting October 1st, which is Tuesday. It will throw me an error stating that start date should be Monday. So I have to make sure I have to select a date which is Monday. So I'm selecting 7th October. So it will not throw me an error. It will allow me to select the particular date. I was able to select this date because the date is Monday. In the end date, if I select a date which is less than start date, it will throw me an error. For example, here I'm selecting 1st September, which is less than the start date. So it will throw me an error stating that end date should be greater than start date. One more validation what I have done here is I have selected October 7th and now it should throw me an error if I select October 11 because I don't want to select 5 days. It should be 14 days apart and it should be it should be 14 days apart or 28 days, like that. It should be in multiples of 2 weeks apart. For example, here since I have selected October 7th, it will allow me to select October 18th because it is 2 weeks apart, no issues. But if I select October 11th, it is not 2 weeks apart, so it will throw me an error saying that end date should be Friday and difference should be in multiples of 2 weeks apart. So this is my validation. For example, here if I select 25, it is 3 weeks apart, so it will not allow me to select. If I select first November, it will allow me because it is 4 weeks apart, and then it is it is like 4 weeks apart, so it will allow me to select. So this is the validation rule. This is the Lightning Web component which I have developed for this date validations. So I'm using two dates, one for start date and the other one is for end date. I will explain only the start date validation. You can definitely go through the end date validation, which is kind of huge, and it will be somewhat easier to understand if you understand the start date validation. So whenever the date is changed, it will call this handle change method. First I'm checking whether it is start date or it is end date. If it is start date, I'm setting the selected date, which is a variable in JavaScript, to new date of event.target.value. I'm doing this so that it will convert the date into my current time zone. I'm getting the time offset using get time zone offset method from JavaScript, and then I'm finding the difference. I'm multiplying that by 60,000 and then I'm adding it to the current date time. I wanted to do all the validation in GMT or UTC, so that is the reason I'm finding the offset, multiplying by 60,000 and then adding it to the date. Using JavaScript get day method, I'm finding out what is the day value. If it is 1, then it is definitely Monday, so it will allow me to set the value. If I select any other date other than Monday, it will throw me an error. It will set my start date to null, end date to null, and I'm using set timeout to set the start date and end date to null because I wanted the values on the HTML to be updated. So I'm using a set timeout so that it will be reactive. If they haven't selected this start date, I am setting the start date value and end date value to null. Same way, I'm using set timeout to set the values to null. For example, here if I select, if I remove it, it should remove the end date also. So I'm making sure I'm removing the end date and as well as the start date value to null. Same way I'm doing it for end date also. You can go through this. In order to get the sample JavaScript code and or the entire Lightning Web Component code for your reference, please check the video description. In the video description, I have shared my blog post. From the blog post, you should be able to get this a complete sample code for your reference. I hope it was helpful. Thank you for watching.